In this video, I just want to go through on how to join the webinar and how to use some of the controls inside the webinar and basically give you a bit of an idea about what a webinar is. Now, firstly, what we want to do is you should have received an email with the Join the Webinar link on it. So that can be either the button or the link on it. So you might have, depends on how the email came out and what your email client is, it should show the button or a Join Now link. Now, with the webinar, the idea of the webinar is it actually allows you to join the webinar and see the desktop of the presenter on the other end. You may or may not have speakers on your computer. So if you haven't got speakers on the computer, you can also access the webinar by using a toll-free number here, and you use this access code to get in. So you can actually see the webinar on your computer and you can hear the webinar via your phone. Now, if you're in another country, so in this case, this is Australia, but if you're calling from another country, you can click this link and it comes up to the different areas where you can call from. So I think there's 17 different countries you can call from, and so that gives you the toll-free numbers from there. So you can either use the drop-down box or the view all country box, and you can use the numbers that are there. Now, as you can see, the access code is the same for the webinar, but we don't really want you to run up long distance expenses and that sort of stuff if you can. So, if you're calling from another area, make sure you check where you're calling from, or check that number that's in that email. Now that you've got the link, you then just click on the Join the Now link screen. Now this will come with a GoToWebinar launcher. You can go with the launch to GoToWebinar, but here we actually have some browsers. I'm using Firefox in this. This happens on some browsers, but if you're not using Firefox, you may not get this, but if you're using some of the browsers, you'll get this Citrix Online Launcher pop up. Because I've got two screens, it popped up on the other screen, so I'll just bring it here, but it should pop up on the screen. You click OK to that, and then it should do this. The launcher comes up, and it's going to the webinar. It'll automatically start up over time. And then you get this pop-up box saying it's waiting for the organizer to attend. That's if the organizer hasn't started the webinar.
Welcome to the webinar. Please stand by. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line.
Okay, so now the organizers actually started the webinar. This is actually in the waiting room, waiting for the presenter to actually start the webinar. So there was that first screen that you saw, which was where it wasn't started. Now this is just what they call the waiting room. This is where you actually wait for the webinar to start. As you can see, you can also get the list of other call numbers there again as well.
The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, so now the webinar has started, you can see the presenter's screen. Now there's a couple of things here. This is your actual control panel. So you may actually see it as a little hand over the side here, so it might actually be sitting on the side of the screen. But all you do is to open it up like that, and then you can see the whole control panel here. So as I was saying before, there's two ways to join. You can actually share the screen and have the mic and speakers, or you can share the screen and use your telephone, and that comes up with a telephone thing, and the additional phone numbers are here. Right, so the way you communicate on a webinar, normally this is the question box, and you type your question in here. So you go hi, and then they can respond to you back via this question box. So that's how you communicate with the organizer. The other way you can do it is, there might be a raise your hand. In some webinars, they get you to raise your hand if you agree with things. It's also another way of getting people's attention is if you raise your hand. So that's the hand raising. So that's how you really communicate on the webinar. If you've got problems with sound and audio, a good thing to do is do a sound check and just see if you're using, if you're using a microphone, you can talk. You can see I'm actually using the microphone. And if you want to hear something, so in this case, I'm using a headset, and you can play a sound to make sure you can hear it okay. Right. And that's basically the tools of a webinar. Problems you might have with a webinar depends on where you are and what sort of connection you have on the internet. In most areas, people have a reasonable enough internet connection to be able to hear them with good quality. If you're on ADSL, ADSL2, or all the faster ones, you'll have no problems listening to the webinars. And that gives you a quick little overview on how to use the tools for GoToWebinar. And we look forward to seeing you on our webinars. Thanks, and bye for now.